Stop scrolling. Right now, in this exact moment, you might be standing at the edge of the most significant shift your reality has ever experienced, and you're about to miss it because you don't know what to look for. I'm going to tell you something that's going to sound absolutely insane, but stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll never experience reality the same way again. There is a specific sensation, a particular sequence of events that happens right before your entire reality reorganizes itself, and most people completely ignore it. They brush it off as stress, as coincidence, as their imagination playing tricks on them. But what if I told you that this feeling, this eerie calm that washes over you right before everything changes, is actually your consciousness preparing to quantum leap into a completely different timeline? Think about the last major shift in your life. Not just a small change, but a massive pivot, something that completely altered your trajectory. Now rewind to the days or even hours before that shift happened. Can you remember it? That strange silence. That weird feeling where time seemed to slow down, where suddenly everything felt pregnant with possibility, like the entire universe was holding its breath. Most people experience this and they get scared. They think something bad is about to happen because our brains are wired to interpret the unknown as dangerous. But here's what's actually happening at a quantum level. Your consciousness is beginning to decohere from your current reality construct. In quantum physics, there's this phenomenon called quantum coherence, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observation collapses them into one definite state. Your consciousness works the same way. Right now you exist across infinite potential timelines, infinite versions of your life, but your focused awareness has collapsed into this one specific experience you call your reality. But before a major shift, before you quantum leap to a radically different timeline, your consciousness begins to loosen its grip on the current one. And that loosening, that dissolution of your attachment to this specific reality, that's what creates that eerie calm, that silence before the storm. Here's where it gets wild. Right before a reality shift, you'll start noticing something that scientists call synchronicity clustering. This isn't just seeing 11:11 on the clock one time. This is when synchronicities start stacking on top of each other so fast that it becomes mathematically impossible to dismiss them as coincidence. You think of a song you haven't heard in years, and it plays in the coffee shop 5 minutes later. You have a random thought about someone from your past, and they email you that same day. You dream something specific, and elements of that dream show up in your waking life within 48 hours. This isn't magic. This is your consciousness beginning to pierce through the veil between parallel timelines. When you're about to shift, the boundaries between probable realities become thin, permeable, and information starts bleeding through. But here's what most people don't understand. These synchronicities aren't just random occurrences. They're confirmation signals. They're the universe's way of showing you that your consciousness is becoming coherent with a new timeline. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you're locked into one station, one reality, the signal is clear and consistent. But when you're shifting frequencies, when you're moving from one station to another, there's that moment where you catch fragments of multiple stations at once. That's what these synchronicities are. They're fragments of the reality you're moving toward, breaking through into your current experience. And the more you notice them, the more they multiply. Because observation itself is a creative act in quantum mechanics. Now, let me tell you about the sensation that almost everyone experiences, but nobody talks about. In the days or hours before a major reality shift, you'll feel this uncanny sense of detachment. It's not depression. It's not anxiety. It's something else entirely. You'll look at your life, at your routines, at the people around you, and suddenly it all feels slightly unreal, like you're watching a movie of your life rather than living it. Your problems that felt so massive yesterday suddenly feel distant, almost irrelevant. Your attachments to outcomes start loosening without you consciously trying to let go. This is your consciousness beginning to observe from a higher vantage point. You're literally starting to see your current reality from outside of it, which is the first requirement for shifting out of it. And here's the most crucial part that determines whether you actually complete the shift or snap back into your old reality. When you start feeling this detachment, when the synchronicities start clustering, when that eerie calm settles over your life, you're going to feel an overwhelming urge to do something dramatic. Your ego is going to panic because it senses that its grip on reality is loosening. It's going to tell you to make a big move, to force something to happen, to create change through action. But that's the trap. The reality shift isn't happening because of what you do externally. It's happening because of what's already transforming internally at the consciousness level. The external reality is always the last thing to shift because physical matter is the densest, slowest form of energy. Your consciousness shifts first, then your energy shifts, then your perceptions shift, then your emotions shift, then your thoughts shift. And finally, last of all, your external circumstances shift to match. So if you're feeling this right now, if anything I've described is resonating with a recognition so deep it's almost uncomfortable, then pay attention. Don't scroll past this moment. Don't dismiss what you're feeling. You're not imagining it. You're not going crazy. You're standing at the threshold of a reality shift. And what you do in these next few days will determine whether you step through that threshold into a completely new timeline or whether you contract back into the familiar prison of your current reality. The question isn't whether the shift is possible. The shift is already happening. The question is whether you're aware enough to move with it. You know that moment when you're thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in months, maybe even years, and within minutes your phone buzzes and it's them. Most people laugh it off. They call it a weird coincidence, share it as a fun story, and move on with their day. But what if I told you that wasn't a coincidence at all? What if that moment, that exact experience, was you witnessing the observer effect in real time, watching your consciousness literally collapse probability waves and shape physical reality? And what if I told you that when these moments start happening more frequently, when your thoughts seem to materialize at an impossible speed, you're not just getting lucky, you're actually activating a quantum mechanism that's been dormant inside you your entire life. Let me take you deeper into this, because once you understand what's really happening, you can't unsee it. In quantum mechanics, there's this famous experiment called the double slit experiment. Scientists shoot particles at a barrier with two slits, and here's where it gets absolutely mind-bending. When nobody's watching, when there's no observer, the particles behave like waves and go through both slits simultaneously, creating an interference pattern. But the moment you observe which slit the particle goes through, the moment you measure it, the wave function collapses, and the particle chooses one specific path. The act of observation literally changes physical reality. Now, scientists have tried for decades to explain this away, to say it's about the measurement device interfering with the particle. But experiment after experiment keeps confirming the same truth. Consciousness affects matter at the quantum level. Your entire reality is made of these quantum particles. Every single atom in your body, every photon of light hitting your eyes, every sound wave reaching your ears, all of it exists in superposition, in multiple potential states, until your consciousness observes it and collapses it into one specific experience. You're not experiencing an objective reality that exists independent of you. You're continuously collapsing an infinite field of possibilities into the specific reality you're witnessing right now. And most of the time, this happens unconsciously. You're running on autopilot, collapsing the same patterns over and over again, which is why your life feels repetitive, why you keep attracting the same situations, the same types of people, the same problems in different packaging. But here's where everything changes. There are moments in your life when the observer effect becomes turbocharged, when your attention doesn't just passively observe reality, but actively and rapidly creates it. And this happens right before or during a major reality shift. Suddenly, things you think about start manifesting not in weeks or months, but in hours or days. You set an intention in the morning, and by evening, the universe has rearranged itself to deliver. You focus on a specific outcome, and synchronicities start lining up so perfectly, it's almost unsettling. This isn't manifestation in the traditional sense, where you're trying to attract something external to you. This is you recognizing that the external was never separate from you in the first place. Think about the last time you experienced a breakthrough, a moment where something clicked and your life suddenly accelerated in a new direction. Before that breakthrough happened, didn't you notice that your thoughts seemed more powerful? That your focus felt laser sharp? That when you decided something, it happened with unusual speed and ease? Most people think the breakthrough caused their reality to shift, but it's actually the reverse. Your consciousness shifted first. You activated the observer effect at a higher level of coherence, and your reality reorganized itself to match that new level of awareness. The breakthrough wasn't the cause, it was the effect of a quantum shift that was already happening in your consciousness. Now let me tell you what this actually feels like when it's happening, because you need to recognize it in real time. You'll start noticing that your attention feels different. It's not scattered or fragmented the way it usually is. You'll be having a conversation, and you'll catch yourself being completely present, not thinking about the past or future, just fully there in the moment. And in those moments of complete presence, things start happening. Solutions to problems appear out of nowhere. People say exactly what you need to hear. Opportunities manifest that weren't there 5 minutes ago. This is because presence, pure, undivided attention, is the most powerful force in quantum mechanics. It's the observation that collapses infinite possibilities into specific reality. But here's the trap that stops most people from sustaining this activated state. The moment you notice that your attention is creating results, your ego jumps in and tries to control it. You start thinking, okay, if my thoughts create reality, then I need to think the right thoughts. I need to control my mind perfectly. I can't have any negative thoughts or I'll manifest bad things. And the moment you go into that controlling mindset, the magic stops. The observer effect doesn't work through force or control. It works through coherent attention, through presence, through the effortless focus that happens when you're genuinely interested in something, when you're in flow, when you're so absorbed in the moment that there's no separation between you and what you're observing. This is why children manifest so easily. Why, when they want something, they often get it in the most unexpected ways. They haven't yet learned to interfere with their own creative power. They haven't developed that layer of doubt, that mental commentary that says, this is impossible, or I'm not worthy, or reality doesn't work that way. They simply desire, focus, and allow. And their reality responds because they're not creating resistance between their consciousness and the quantum field. So when you start noticing that your thoughts are manifesting faster, when you think of someone and they appear, when you need something and it shows up, when reality starts feeling unusually responsive to your mental state, don't dismiss it. Don't let your rational mind explain it away as coincidence. You're experiencing the observer effect activation. Your consciousness is operating at a higher level of coherence, and the quantum field is responding to that coherence. This is the doorway. This is the mechanism through which reality shifts happen. And the more you recognize it, the more you acknowledge it, without trying to force it, the more powerful it becomes. You're not trying to manifest anymore. You're recognizing that you've been manifesting your entire life. You just weren't conscious of it. And now that you can see the connection between your attention and your reality, everything is about to change in ways you can't even imagine yet. There's this feeling that almost nobody talks about, but I guarantee you've experienced it. You wake up one morning and something is wrong, but you can't put your finger on what it is. Your life looks exactly the same as it did yesterday. Same apartment, same job, same people around you. Nothing has changed externally, but internally, everything feels off. Your favorite coffee shop that you've been going to for years suddenly feels foreign. The conversations you're having with friends feel hollow, like you're going through the motions. Your own bedroom feels like a hotel room. The routines that used to give you comfort now feel suffocating. And the most confusing part? You can't explain why. There's no logical reason for this feeling. No traumatic event triggered it. No major life change happened. You just woke up one day and your reality doesn't fit anymore. Most people panic when this happens. They think they're depressed. They think something is wrong with them. They go to therapy, they talk to friends, they try to figure out what they need to fix in their external circumstances to make this feeling go away. They think maybe they need to move to a new city, quit their job, end a relationship. They're convinced that if they just change something on the outside, this uncomfortable feeling will stop. But here's what's actually happening, and this is going to completely reframe everything for you. That feeling of being off in your current reality isn't a problem to be solved. It's a frequency gap. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's your consciousness vibrating at a higher frequency while your external reality is still operating at the old frequency. And that mismatch, that dissonance, that's what creates that intensely uncomfortable feeling. Let me explain this in terms that actually make sense. Everything in the universe is energy vibrating at different frequencies. Your thoughts vibrate at a certain frequency. Your emotions vibrate at a certain frequency. Your physical body vibrates at a frequency. And your external reality, all the circumstances, people, places, and situations in your life, they all vibrate at frequencies that match the frequency you've been predominantly operating at. Your reality is literally a vibrational match to your consciousness. This isn't mystical nonsense. This is basic physics, like at the energetic level. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are, what you're vibrating as. Now here's where it gets really interesting. When you start doing inner work, when you start shifting your awareness, when you have those observer effect activation moments we talked about in the last chapter, your consciousness begins to vibrate at a higher frequency. You're literally becoming a different person at the energetic level. Your thoughts are different. Your emotional responses are different. The way you perceive reality is different. But your external reality, that hasn't caught up yet. Physical reality is the slowest form of energy. It's the densest. It takes time for matter to reorganize itself to match your new frequency. So you end up in this bizarre in-between state where internally you've already shifted, but externally you're still living in the reality that matches your old frequency. And that gap, that space between your internal frequency and your external reality's frequency, that's what creates that feeling of everything being wrong. Think about trying to wear clothes from 5 years ago. They might technically still fit, but they feel wrong. They don't match who you are now. They don't reflect your current style, your current energy, your current sense of self. That's exactly what's happening with your reality when you feel this frequency gap. Your current life circumstances are the clothes you picked out when you were vibrating at a completely different frequency. And now that you've shifted, now that you've evolved, those same circumstances feel constrictive, ill-fitting, wrong. Your apartment that used to feel cozy now feels claustrophobic. Your job that used to challenge you now feels mind-numbing. Your relationship that used to excite you now feels draining. And people always make the mistake of blaming the external circumstances. They think the apartment is too small, the job is too boring, the relationship is wrong. But the apartment didn't change. The job didn't change. The relationship didn't change. You changed. You shifted frequency. And now you're experiencing the discomfort of living in a reality that no longer matches who you are. This is one of the most dangerous points in any reality shift. Because this is where most people abort the process. The discomfort becomes so intense that they do one of two things. Either they try to force external changes before the internal shift is complete, which creates chaos and usually makes things worse. Or they contract back down to their old frequency, because at least that was familiar, at least that felt comfortable, even if it was limiting. They convinced themselves they were being unrealistic, that they should be grateful for what they have, that this discomfort is just their mind playing tricks on them. And so they suppress the new frequency, they shut down the expansion, and they squeeze themselves back into the reality that no longer fits. And every time you do that, every time you contract back down after your consciousness has tried to expand, it becomes harder to initiate the next shift. Your consciousness learns that expansion equals discomfort, and it starts resisting growth. But here's what you need to understand if you're going to successfully navigate this frequency gap. The discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. The discomfort is confirmation that something is right. It means your consciousness has successfully shifted to a new frequency, and your reality is in the process of catching up. You're not supposed to feel comfortable during this phase. Comfort is the feeling of alignment between your internal and external reality. Discomfort is the feeling of misalignment, and misalignment is a necessary phase of transition. You cannot quantum leap from one reality to another without going through this in-between space where nothing feels right. The key is understanding what to do during this phase, and more importantly, what not to do. Don't make impulsive decisions to escape the discomfort. Don't blow up your life trying to force the external to match the internal. That's your ego panicking, trying to control the shift. The shift is already happening. Your job isn't to make it happen. Your job is to allow it to complete. This means sitting in the discomfort without reacting to it. This means continuing to operate at your new frequency even when your external reality hasn't reflected it yet. This means trusting that the physical world is reorganizing itself to match your consciousness even when you can't see evidence of it yet. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening behind the scenes. During this frequency gap phase, your energy field is broadcasting a new signal. Every person you interact with is subconsciously picking up on the fact that you've changed. Opportunities that match your new frequency are beginning to align, but they haven't materialized yet. Situations and people that no longer match your frequency are beginning to naturally fall away, but they haven't completely exited yet. You're in quantum superposition. You're simultaneously in your old reality and your new reality. And the moment you try to collapse that superposition prematurely, the moment you try to force a decision about which reality you're in, you usually collapse back into the old one because that's what's familiar. The frequency gap is the test. It's the initiation. It's where you prove to the universe, and more importantly to yourself, that you're serious about this shift. Because anyone can feel good about changing when the external validation is there. Anyone can maintain a high frequency when their reality is reflecting back success and alignment. But can you maintain your new frequency when nothing around you has changed yet? Can you be the person you're becoming before your circumstances confirm it? Can you hold the vision of your new reality while still living in the old one? That's the real work. That's what separates the people who actually shift realities from the people who just think about it. I need you to think back to the last time you experienced déjà vu. Not the mild kind where something feels vaguely familiar. I'm talking about the intense kind where you know with absolute certainty that you've lived this exact moment before. You know what the person is about to say before they say it. You know what's about to happen next. And for those few seconds, time feels strange. Reality feels thin, and you're gripped by this overwhelming sensation that you've somehow stepped outside of linear time. Now, what did you do when that happened? If you're like most people, you probably shook it off, made a joke about it, called it a glitch in the matrix, and moved on. But what if that moment wasn't a glitch at all? What if it was actually your consciousness briefly accessing a parallel timeline? A version of reality where you've already lived this moment. And what you're experiencing is the bleed-through between two quantum states. Here's what mainstream science will tell you about déjà vu. They'll say it's a neurological hiccup, a misfiring in your temporal lobe, a delay in processing that makes your brain think it's remembering something when it's actually experiencing it for the first time. And sure, that might explain the mild cases, but it doesn't explain the intense ones. It doesn't explain the times when you not only feel like you've been somewhere before, but you can accurately predict what's about to happen next, and you're right. It doesn't explain the moments where you're having a conversation and you suddenly remember having this exact conversation before, down to the specific words, the lighting in the room, the expression on the other person's face. That's not a neurological misfire. That's your consciousness momentarily existing in two timelines simultaneously. In quantum physics, there's a concept called the many worlds interpretation. It suggests that every decision, every choice, every possibility that could happen actually does happen, but in different parallel universes. Every time you make a choice, reality branches. One version of you goes left, another version goes right, and both timelines exist simultaneously in the quantum field. Now, most of the time, your consciousness is locked into one specific timeline. You're experiencing one continuous stream of reality, one version of your life. But when you're in the process of a major reality shift, when your consciousness is loosening its grip on your current timeline and preparing to quantum leap to a different one, the boundaries between these parallel realities become permeable. And that's when you start experiencing timeline bleed-through. The déjà vu is just one form of this. Another form that's becoming increasingly common is the Mandela Effect. You remember something one way, you're absolutely certain about your memory, but when you check, reality says something different. You remember a movie quote being one thing, but now it's different. You remember a brand logo looking one way, but now it looks another way. You remember a celebrity dying years ago, but apparently they're still alive, or they died at a different time. And it's not just you. Thousands, sometimes millions of people share the exact same false memory. Now, the rational explanation is that we're all just misremembering, that human memory is flawed and suggestible. But what if the explanation is actually that we're remembering correctly? We're just remembering a different timeline. What if reality isn't as fixed as we think it is? What if the past isn't set in stone, but is actually fluid and changes based on the timeline you're currently occupying? In quantum mechanics, there's something called retrocausality, the idea that the future can influence the past. That observation in the present can change what happened in the past. If consciousness can collapse quantum possibilities in the present, why couldn't it also collapse them retroactively? Why couldn't shifting to a new timeline mean shifting to one where the past is slightly different? And if you're shifting between timelines, you might carry memories from the old timeline even as you're living in the new one. That's not a false memory. That's a memory from a parallel reality that you've shifted away from. But here's where it gets even stranger. And this is something you need to pay very close attention to because it happens right before major reality shifts. You'll start experiencing what I call future memories. These are different from déjà vu because you're not remembering something that's happening now, you're remembering something that hasn't happened yet. You'll have a flash, a vision, a knowing of a future event. Not in a vague, predictive way, but in a specific, detailed, memory-like way. And then days, weeks, or months later, that exact scenario plays out in your physical reality. You're not predicting the future. You're remembering it. Your consciousness has briefly accessed a timeline where that event has already occurred. And you've brought that memory back with you into your current timeline. This is how intuition actually works at the quantum level. You're not receiving mystical messages from the universe. You're accessing information from parallel timelines where different versions of events have already played out. Your consciousness isn't limited to linear time the way your physical body is. At the quantum level, past, present, and future exist simultaneously. All possibilities exist now. And when your consciousness is in that heightened state right before a reality shift, when the observer effect is activated and the frequency gap is creating that feeling of being between worlds, your access to these other timelines increases dramatically. Now let me tell you about the reality glitches, because these are the most unsettling form of timeline bleed-through. These are the moments where the simulation, the hologram, the matrix, whatever you want to call it, momentarily flickers. You see something impossible. Someone appears in a place they couldn't possibly be. An object is somewhere you definitely didn't put it. You look at a clock, and it says one time, you look away and look back, and it says a different time. That doesn't make linear sense. You're driving, and suddenly you're miles ahead of where you should be, with no memory of the drive in between. These aren't hallucinations. These aren't tricks of perception. These are moments where the consistency of your timeline briefly breaks down because you're in the process of shifting to a different one. Think of your reality like a movie playing on a screen. Most of the time, the film runs smoothly, frame by frame, creating the illusion of continuous motion, continuous time, continuous reality. But when you're shifting timelines, it's like the projectionist is switching out the film reel. There's a moment where the old film is ending and the new film is beginning. And in that transition, there might be a flicker, a skip, a moment where frames from both films appear on the screen simultaneously. That's what these reality glitches are. They're not errors. They're confirmation that you're in transition between one timeline and another. And here's the most important thing you need to understand about all of these phenomena, whether it's déjà vu, Mandela Effects, future memories, or reality glitches. They're not random. They increase in frequency and intensity right before you complete a major reality shift. They're like contractions before birth. They're the labor pains of a new reality trying to emerge through your consciousness. And most people, when these experiences start happening more frequently, they get scared. They think they're losing their mind. They think something is wrong with their perception of reality. So they shut down. They stop paying attention. They rationalize everything away. And in doing so, they abort the shift. But if you're experiencing these things right now, if timeline bleed-through is happening to you with increasing frequency, you need to recognize it for what it is. Your consciousness is no longer fully locked into your current timeline. You're becoming unstuck in time. You're gaining access to the quantum field where all possibilities exist simultaneously. And this access, this ability to perceive beyond the linear limitations of your current reality, this is the doorway through which you actually shift. You can't quantum leap to a new timeline if your consciousness is still completely identified with and locked into the old one. These experiences are loosening that lock. They're expanding your perception beyond the narrow bandwidth of consensus reality. And the more you acknowledge them, the more you pay attention to them without fear, the more fluid your relationship with time and reality becomes, and the easier it becomes to consciously navigate between timelines instead of unconsciously stumbling through them. There's a moment that comes during every reality shift that most people completely miss. And missing this moment is the difference between actually shifting into a new timeline and snapping back into your old reality like a rubber band. I'm talking about the point of no return. It's that critical window, that specific moment in time where the shift becomes irreversible, where your new reality stops being a possibility and becomes your actual lived experience. And here's what makes this so tricky. This moment doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm that goes off. There's no voice from the universe saying, "This is it. Make your choice now." It comes quietly, often disguised as an ordinary moment, and you have to be awake enough, aware enough, present enough to recognize it when it arrives. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like, because you need to be able to identify this in real time. You've been going through everything we've talked about. You felt that eerie calm before the storm. You noticed the observer effect activating, your thoughts manifesting at impossible speeds. You've been sitting in the discomfort of the frequency gap, feeling totally off in your current reality. You've experienced the timeline bleed through, the déjà vu, the glitches, the sense that you're existing between worlds. And then one day, something happens. Someone makes you an offer. An opportunity presents itself. A choice appears in front of you. And this choice, this specific decision, requires you to act like the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. This is the test. This is the moment where the universe, where quantum reality, where your higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is asking you one simple question. Are you serious about this shift, or are you just fantasizing about it? Because up until this point, everything has been internal. You've been doing the consciousness work. You've been raising your frequency. You've been noticing the signs. But you haven't had to risk anything. You haven't had to put skin in the game. You haven't had to make a choice that could actually change your external circumstances in an irreversible way. And now that moment is here. The moment where you have to choose between the comfort of your known reality and the uncertainty of your new one. Here's what makes this moment so powerful and so terrifying. The choice that appears during the point of no return almost never makes logical sense. It's not going to be the safe choice. It's not going to be the choice that everyone around you would approve of. It's not going to be the choice that your old programming, your conditioning, your fear-based thinking would make. In fact, your rational mind is going to come up with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't make this choice. It's too risky. It's too soon. You're not ready. You don't have enough money, enough experience, enough credentials, enough certainty. And all of those reasons will sound completely valid because they are valid from the perspective of your old reality, from the perspective of who you were. But they're not valid from the perspective of who you're becoming. The person you're becoming doesn't need more certainty before they act. The person you're becoming doesn't wait until all the conditions are perfect. The person you're becoming understands that you don't become ready and then take action. You take action and that action makes you ready. You don't build confidence and then do the scary thing. You do the scary thing and that builds confidence. This is the fundamental difference between people who talk about shifting their reality and people who actually do it. The people who actually shift understand that the external circumstances will never confirm the shift before you commit to it. You have to commit first. You have to act from your new frequency before your reality reflects that frequency back to you. Think about every major transition point in human life. The moment before you quit the job that's suffocating you without having another one lined up. The moment before you end the relationship that's no longer serving you, even though you're terrified of being alone. The moment before you move to a new city where you don't know anyone. The moment before you start the business with no guarantee it will succeed. The moment before you tell someone the truth that might change everything. Every single one of these moments requires you to step into the unknown, to act as if your new reality is already here, even when all evidence says it's not. And that action, that decisive choice made from your new frequency rather than your old fear, that's what anchors the shift. That's what makes it irreversible. Let me explain the quantum mechanics of why this works. We've talked about how your consciousness collapses probability waves, how observation creates reality. But there's another principle at play here called quantum entanglement. When you make a choice, when you take an action, you don't just affect yourself. You affect everything in your reality that's entangled with you. You send ripples through the quantum field. You set off a chain reaction of events that begin reorganizing your external circumstances to match the choice you just made. But here's the key. The bigger the choice, the more decisive the action. The more irreversible the commitment, the stronger that quantum ripple effect becomes. When you make small, tentative, reversible choices, you create small, weak ripples that don't have enough momentum to actually shift your timeline. You're still hedging your bets. You're still keeping one foot in your old reality, just in case the new one doesn't work out. And the quantum field responds to that hedging. It keeps you in a state of superposition, in that uncomfortable in-between space where you're neither here nor there. But when you make a big, decisive, irreversible choice, when you fully commit to your new timeline through action, you create a massive quantum wave that fundamentally reorganizes the field around you. You force the collapse. You end the superposition. You anchor yourself in the new timeline. Now here's what happens after you make that decisive choice, and you need to be prepared for this because it's going to feel wrong. There's going to be a period, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, where your external reality looks worse than it did before you made the choice. The old structures start falling away faster. People who were in your life exit more abruptly. Circumstances that were stable become unstable. And your ego is going to absolutely panic. It's going to tell you that you made a mistake, that you should have stayed where you were, that you've ruined everything. This is what I call the void period, and it's the most dangerous phase of any reality shift, because this is where most people panic and try to go back. But you can't go back. That's why it's called the point of no return. Once you've made that decisive choice, once you've taken that irreversible action, the old timeline is no longer available to you in the same way. You've quantum leaped. Your consciousness has moved. And even if you tried to recreate your old circumstances, even if you tried to undo your choice, you would find that it's impossible. The people won't take you back the same way. The job won't be available anymore. The door you walked through has closed behind you. And this is actually a good thing, even though it's terrifying, because it means you can't abort the shift. You can't contract back down into your old frequency. You're forced to move forward into your new reality, even when you can't see it yet. The void period exists because physical reality is the slowest form of energy to shift. Your consciousness has already moved. Your frequency has already changed. But the physical world needs time to catch up, to reorganize, to materialize the circumstances that match your new state of being. And during that reorganization, during that transition, there's a period where the old has fallen away, but the new hasn't fully formed yet. You're in the space between trapeze bars. You've let go of one, but you haven't grabbed the other yet. And every instinct in your body is going to tell you to reach back for the bar you just released, because at least that was solid. At least that was something to hold on to. But this is where faith comes in. Not religious faith, quantum faith. The understanding that the new bar is already there, already swinging toward you, even if you can't see it yet. The understanding that your decisive action has already set everything in motion. The understanding that the void is not emptiness, it's pure potential reorganizing itself into form. And your job during this period is not to do more, not to force more, not to make more things happen. Your job is to maintain your new frequency, to continue being the person who made that bold choice, to trust that the physical reality is catching up to the energetic reality you've already created. And then one day, usually when you least expect it, the new reality materializes. The opportunity appears, the person shows up, the circumstances align, the door opens, and you realize that everything that fell away needed to fall away. Everything that felt like a loss was actually making space. Everything that looked like a mistake was actually the exact right move. Your reality has shifted. You're living in a new timeline. And the person you were before you made that decisive choice, that person couldn't have accessed this reality. They weren't vibrating at the right frequency. They weren't ready for it. But you are, because you made the choice. You took the action. You stepped through the point of no return. And on the other side, you found the reality you've been moving toward this entire time.